Hello everyone, and welcome to our first Capitol Watch program for the 2012 session of the Missouri General Assembly, our weekly look at legislative developments and how they will impact K-12 education throughout our state. And joining us from our Jefferson City office is MSBA's Associate Executive Director for Advocacy, Mike Reed. And Mike, as always, thanks for joining us.
And good morning. It is time to get started and get going. It just seems like we just finished the last session. Time certainly flies. So, but it's time to get ready and make sure that the kids of Missouri are protected because the legislature's in session.
All right, Mike. And of course, the session began on Wednesday of this past week and began with some opening speeches by both legislative leaders, and they both mentioned education, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They both said that education would be a top priority this year. With a whole bunch of ideas that to change public education. Some of the changes we don't think are for the best for public school students, but it's going to be a challenge for the coming year for a lot of reasons. Money being a big cause and a big situation that will be very questionable this year.
One of the speeches, of course, was by the Senate President Pro Tem, Rob Mayer, and he also held a news conference immediately after his speech and discuss the outlook for the session, and let's take a look at a little bit of that news conference right now.
There's a lot of things that will take place this session that I feel like that are very important. Certainly balancing the budget without a tax increase, also revising our foundation formula to make certain that our K through 12 school systems throughout the state of Missouri are equitably funded, and certainly taking up some provisions and measures that will create job opportunities and economic commerce for the state of Missouri.
All right, Mike, and Senator Mayer there mentioned the foundation formula, and the foundation formula fix is going to be a big issue this session. Tell us about that and where we stand on that.
Well, the real question is, what is the fix? The adequate fix for the foundation formula is fully funding the formula, and that hasn't happened in the last 3 years. We're $300 million short on funding the formula during the phase-in part. Plus, on top of that, there will be a $500 million hole in the state budget this year. So, so there are a lot of ideas out there floating around on the formula. Are we going to just prorate it? Is everyone going to receive the same proration share? So hold harmless and not hold harmless schools will be prorated at the same amount. Will hold harmless schools get a certain amount and not hold harmless different? There's a lot of ideas out there that are floating around, and there is no consensus at this time. We're looking at all of the ideas to see what's best. Honestly, the best fix for the formula, fund it completely.
And yet, Mike, you talk about the budget hole the state is facing, and legislative leaders seem to pretty much rule out the possibility of revenue increases, didn't they?
Oh, there will be no revenue increases. There will be no tax increases. This is an election year, and this is a mantra that goes through both parties: is that live within what you have. There's been a tremendous downturn in the state economics for the last 3 years. Last several years, we've had federal money to help prop up the state budget. This year, there is no federal money to prop up that budget. So there will be some holes, and we're going to have to look very closely to make sure that education does not take the brunt of the cuts.
You mentioned the state budget issues facing the state, Mike, and the Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Kurt Schaefer of Columbia also participated in a news conference this week in which he discussed the outlook for the state budget, and let's take a look at a little bit of that right now.
You know, I've been asked by several of you, what's the budget hole and what are we going to have to do? And a lot of those things, rely upon the governor. The constitutional process is very clearly dictated. The agencies work with the governor. That's where most of the money goes, and the governor develops that over a period of several months. And I eagerly look forward to the state of the state when we find out what the governor's proposals are.
So, Mike, the State of the State address coming up on January 17th, that's always a very important event, and we will find out more about the governor's budget proposals at that time, won't we?
That is right. That's when the blueprint, the governor's ideas of where the money is coming from, where it's going, how it's going to be divided up. Senator Schaefer's done a really good job of keeping the funding at least flat for us, and K-12 education has not taken the cuts that numerous groups have, and we appreciate his and Representative Shelby's in the House, the budget chair in the House, making sure that we at least stay flat. This year is going to be a big hurdle to go over, just because there is a tremendous shortage of money, and in general revenue, there's maybe $7 billion that can be moved around between state agencies, and this is maybe as much as a $500 million hole. That's a tremendous amount of money that's going to have to be cut from state agencies.
Mike, another issue we'll be following this session is the so-called Turner Fix. Has to do with students from unaccredited school districts transferring to neighboring school districts. There's been court cases on this, a lot of controversy and some tension among school districts, especially in the St. Louis and Kansas City area, about this issue. Where do we stand on that?
Well, we're still looking at all the parameters. There were some ideas that were floated last year that we still work with. Representative Rick Stream's bill on the Turner Fix, having districts surrounding unaccredited districts tell to the unaccredited districts the number of seats that they have available. So this is a work in progress. Part of the Turner Fix is being held hostage because certain groups want other things, including tuition tax credits passed, and they want to tie that to the Turner Fix. Turner Fix is in court as right now, so again, this is something in flux, and we'll be working with this all year long, and we will need the input of our members on how moving students from unaccredited districts to accredited districts will affect their districts. Mm-hmm. It's not, we don't want to educate these students. These students have a right to a public education, but we can't, make sure that one district gets flooded and doesn't have the room for all the students, and make sure that all the kids then get a proper education.
And Mike, House Speaker Steve Tilley has indicated what you were just describing there, that he would prefer to see a lot of these issues bundled together in legislation. Isn't that right? That's
correct. I was talking to Scott Dickhouse, the head of the House Education Committee, yesterday, and he stated that he was going to be bundling all of these, the Turner Fix, money for the foundation, expansion of tuition tax credits, etc. That's the Speaker's plan. I don't think that will reach a very good reception in the Senate. In discussing it with several senators, they state that they want to talk about these things individually, because trying to push one person's agenda on the back of another thing that needs to be done isn't appropriate. Let's discuss each one of these items and vote on them separately, and make sure that the students are the ones who are best served by the passage of pieces of legislation in the state of Missouri.
And Mike, that's certainly what we would prefer, isn't it, that the issues be considered separately?
That's exactly what we prefer. Mm-hmm. And because our members need to know how their representatives vote on these various issues.
Mm-hmm. Mike, also we've had some changes in the House Elementary and Secondary Education Committee. Some members have been added to that committee, and what does that mean?
It means that the committee is stacked for some ideas that the Speaker of the House wants. That's actually what Representative Dickhouse told me yesterday. He said, we had some trouble getting some bills through, and he said, I want to make sure that the bills get through and at least get an opportunity to be discussed on the House floor. Excuse me. And so there were some people who were put on that committee who have some very definite ideas about education, public education and private education, and how certain things should be moved together between the two. It will be a challenge for us to kill bills in that committee, and probably will not be able to kill bills in that committee. But this is where our members need to work with their elected representatives and tell their representatives how these changes affect the students in the districts that our people represent.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike, the legislature is getting into full swing now. What can we expect for the coming week? Are we going to be beginning the hearing process yet?
Well, in talking to both the chairman of both the House and the Senate committees, they thought that there may be some hearings next week. If they do, the first bill that the House will hear is fixes in the formula. So that should be an interesting hearing. Mm-hmm. But as of early this morning, that had not been posted. So we will keep our members informed about that and letting them know what's going on.
All right, Mike Reed, thanks a lot for joining us from Jefferson City. And as Mike mentioned, we will be keeping you informed on legislative activities. Be sure to watch this program. We'll post a new Capitol Watch every Friday morning here on the MSBA website. We'll also be, of course, sending you the electronic Legislative Voice newsletter every Friday. And for daily developments, check the MSBA website for our daily blog. Things do change rapidly sometimes in Jefferson City, and that's a very good way to keep up with legislative activity on a daily basis by checking that blog. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you again next week on the next edition of MSBA's Capitol Watch.